Hey there, everyone. Mike Meeback with KTVU Fox 2 in the San Francisco Bay Area. Today we are talking about blood donations. It's not happening. We need more. Some are happening, but we need a lot more people donating blood during this pandemic. Dr. Yvette Miller, Executive Medical Officer with the American Red Cross, joins me now to talk about this. Doctor, thanks for being with us.
Thank you for the opportunity to share this information.
Yeah, of course. I want to start kind of with a wide open question here because, as you know, thousands of churches, thousands of schools, thousands of workplaces have been shut down. And those are places where, we have blood drives. I know my own office, we usually have a blood drive once a year. That's not happening. And this is having a huge impact on donations right now across America.
Yes, absolutely it is. So as you said, we traditionally have blood drives that are sponsored by schools and colleges and churches. And because many states are still on some partial shelter in place, it has been a tremendous struggle scheduling drives. And of course, thousands of drives have been canceled. So we are definitely at a point where we absolutely are struggling to have adequate blood supply.
Yeah, if I go give blood, this is just a question that's been on my mind. I don't know the answer to this, so I'm excited to hear it. If I go give blood, do I get tested for COVID-19 prior to donating?
Well, that's one of the things that we're in the process of determining how we're going to work that out. At this point, we are not providing testing, routine testing for donors, but that is definitely something that we are looking at doing.
Okay. And then what about, let's say I did test positive for COVID-19 last month, was in quarantine, took another test negative. Does that impact whether or not someone can donate if they've tested positive already?
Well, at this point, if you have tested positive for antibodies to COVID-19, you have to be free from any symptoms for at least 28 days before you present to donate.
Okay, got it. Perfect. Um, and when it comes to safeguards, again, this is on a wide scale here. So if I do go donate blood, whoever's taking the blood has to wear a face mask. I probably have to wear a face mask. What other precautions are being done?
Yes, absolutely. Those are the processes and procedures that we currently have in place, that everyone who presents to a blood drive has to wear a mask. And if a donor presents without a mask, we will provide one for the donor. We also check the donor's temperature before they can enter to the donation site because they must be afebrile before they can um, can donate. So we have been asking a series of questions as well to ensure that the donor has not been exposed to anyone with COVID, that they have been afebrile and they have not had any symptoms. So those are additional questions that we are asking to ensure both the safety of the donor as well as for the staff and the volunteers at the blood drive.
Sure. I understand there's also a critical shortage when it comes to African American donors. Um, how much of a shortage, and why the need right now for African American donors out there?
Well, the need is important for African American donors, primarily to support the transfusion needs of individuals with sickle cell disease. So patients that have sickle cell require frequent transfusions, and the best blood match for a person that has sickle cell disease, and that's mostly African Americans, is a donation, a blood donation from another African American, because that blood needs to be closely matched. And so since March, the number of African American donors that have presented have decreased between 50 to 60%, and we're constantly struggling to meet that need. So we have a huge ask for African American individuals to come and donate blood. And as already mentioned, we do understand how hard hit the African American community has been hit.
Mm.
But we also, as I said, have processes and procedures in place to safeguard the health and welfare of our donors.
Yeah, that's a big number, that drop that you mentioned right there, 50, 60%. Sickle cell disease, for those watching who may not know much about that disease, could you just tell us a little bit more, Dr. Miller, about it?
Yes, so sickle cell disease is a hereditary condition that primarily affects, in this country, it affects our African Americans, but it can affect anyone of any race. And our normal red blood cells are round and soft and pliable, but people that have sickle cell disease, they have an abnormal gene from both their mother and their father. And so when they get sick or they're under stress, their red blood cells, which are normally round, then change shape to the shape of a C or a sickle. And those red blood cells actually get caught in the veins and can cause a person to have a sickle cell, to have a crisis, or to have an infection, or to have some other type of event that is related to the fact that they have sickle cell disease.
How many cases on average would you say in our country on any given year?
In the United States, it's estimated that there's approximately 100,000 individuals that are of African descent that have sickle cell disease. And Hispanics are the second largest population that has sickle cell disease.
And for someone who has this disease and they start to feel sick, and maybe they have an inclination, maybe they already know they have the disease, and they have an inclination that they're going to need a blood transfusion. If they're not getting it, and this kind of goes back to needing more African American donors, but if they're not getting the transfusion, I mean, what happens to their body? How does that process, or what happens? Yeah.
Well, let's talk about what happens when they do get a transfusion. So again, I mentioned that their cells are already sickling and they have definitely can, clot off some of their blood vessels. And so when a person gets a transfusion, that gives them an infusion of normal red blood cells, which can then help carry oxygen to those tissues. So one of the situations where they have pain, it's called a pain crisis, is when they have so many cells in their body that are sickling that it prevents normal blood flow to tissues, and they have this pain crisis. So when we transfuse them with a unit of blood, they have normal red blood cells being infused, and so it can alleviate or even lessen those symptoms of a pain crisis. But if there is not enough blood on the shelves to meet their transfusion needs, then they continue with the pain crisis, which requires them to be heavily medicated and receive narcotics. But it can also lead to loss of limbs and other conditions like pneumonia, as well as stroke. An important consequence of not having an infusion and transfusion is that some of those small blood vessels from the brain can clot off, and it can cause a person with sickle cell disease to have a stroke.
During this pandemic, I'm curious also, Dr. Miller, about someone who has this disease that then also contracts COVID-19. Um, do they tend to be more at risk when it comes to complications?
Well, again, in general, remember those who have chronic conditions or chronic medical conditions are more susceptible to acquiring COVID-19. So that population of sickle cell patients are already at risk. And so then if they acquire the infection and there's not adequate medical care and transfusion, absolutely, there could be dire consequences to that.
Okay. What do you tell people right now who are maybe just a little, I don't want to say afraid, but maybe nervous to go outside? Shelter in place orders are still in place for many parts of the country. Other parts are reopening, but they're watching this and they're like, yeah, I do want to donate. How would you encourage, what words of encouragement would you say in order to get them out the house and to donate?
Well, the first thing I want to offer is that donating blood is an essential service. And even though we are afraid and have some fear and reticence about venturing outside, there are people that need blood transfusions and there will always be a need for blood transfusions. So if you are healthy and well, and we do encourage you to come out and donate. Again, there are procedures in place to safeguard the health and welfare of donors that present to a blood drive. And so bring your mask. And if you don't have a mask, you will definitely be given one. But we absolutely encourage anyone who is healthy and well to come out and donate, because blood is an incredibly valuable resource that we can only donate to each other.
Yeah, I know. My mother needed a blood transfusion back in October, and she's still with us because of that donated blood right there. People can just contact their local Red Cross, Dr. Miller, to maybe make an appointment.
Yes, absolutely. They can call 1-800-RED-CROSS, or they can go to our website at redcrossblood.org and you can enter your zip code into the search engine and you can find the closest blood center where you can schedule an appointment and donate blood.
And to all our viewers watching, just a reminder, you can watch this interview and all COVID-19 related topics on our 24/7 stream, coronavirusnow.com. Dr. Yvette Miller with the American Red Cross, thank you for your time. I appreciate it. Stay safe.
Thank you so much. Appreciate you.